HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This portion of the news brought to you by BTC Every Day.
New details tonight on how the government will roll out and execute its reconstruction plan in the aftermath of Hurricane Joaquin. All this as the Prime Minister declares they will rebuild these devastated communities. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Saunders.
And I'm Charisma Robinson. In a lengthy but detailed news conference today, the nation's leader facilitated a comprehensive analysis of the work done so far in the restoration process of hurricane victims. Each government agency involved gave the most recent update on information gathered and works carried out.
Having achieved phenomenal success today, Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, announced that government has taken on the responsibility of rebuilding. He went into details on how it will be done, the cost of construction, and who will pay it. Here's Clint Watson.
The government has made a commitment to reconstruct, to rebuild, and to establish an organized process to do so.
And having taken on this responsibility, Prime Minister the Right Honorable Perry Christie says he'll do the reconstruction of homes with input and consultation with the Christian community, the opposition, and the private sector, all who will assist in fundraising as well. Former Director of Works Melanie Roach will head the reconstruction team, which will operate out of offices on Tonic Williams-Darling Highway.
We have a very dynamic capital development budget that the Ministry of Works and their officials must continue to implement in our country. And so we thought we have to bring specific focus to the combined efforts of the private and public sector, and that Ms. Roach will lead that charge, supported by engineering teams from the Ministry of Works, from the Ministry of Housing, from the private sector.
Roach says they've already begun receiving reports and have started a list of who needs repairs versus reconstruction. The team will start working on securing materials and contractors in and out of the affected island, keeping in mind the logistics of accommodations.
Government will do what the government needs to do, but there are others who are ready, willing, and able to assist. All we want to make sure is that the efforts are coordinated so that there's not duplication of efforts and that nobody falls through the cracks. We want to make sure that everybody is returned to a sense of normalcy as quickly as possible so that the emotional healing can begin. If people are not comfortable physically, then it's almost impossible for them to start recharging their emotional and spiritual needs.
Mr. Christie addressed the issue of who will pay for these new homes or repairs, noting that assessments and analysis from their team of professionals in the public and private sector will determine who qualifies for help.
There will be some people who we build for, as we did in Acklands, as we did in other places, who we will build a home for and put them in a home. There are others who we will help partially, and there are some who will just do it on their own. And so the question is being able to make the correct assessments and to be able to move ahead with a program that is very broad. Obviously, we are going to raise monies, and there are situations that I have seen this time that causes me to believe that we even have to help some people who are in business.
With more assessments still to come in, the cost to rebuild so far is more than $60 million.
I have already asked the Ministry of Finance to review the opportunities for borrowing money from the Caribbean Development Bank, from monies, concessional financing made available by the Chinese to the region, and other traditional sources, because the country cannot wait, and that even if we were to have the most successful fundraising campaign, these initial positions must, initial requirements must be met by the government.
The Prime Minister also hopes to secure funding through special provisions from the United Nations Convention on Climate Change for small island developing states. The Bahamas is considered a SIDS and has been seriously impacted by these strange weather systems. On the top of the rebuild and repair list will be schools, as the government seeks to minimize the impact to the disruption of children learning on these islands. Mr. Christie says accelerating assessments for repairs to infrastructure, homes, and schools will be priority. Clint Watson, ZNS Network News.
Officials at the Water and Sewage Corporation say they are working aggressively to restore potable water supply to those residents affected by the storm. In providing an island-by-island assessment, Deputy General Manager at Water and Sewage Robert Deal says while they've been successful in restoring supply in San Salvador, Long Key, and the settlements of Sims and Deadman's Key in Long Island, they're challenged in other areas of the island.
That remains in operation at this moment via standby power. What we are doing is gradually extending the range of our system. What happened is we incurred a lot of leaks and damage by connections in customer yards as during flooding, trees being uprooted. And so from time to time, we've had to disconnect some areas to ensure that we're not losing excessive amounts of water. Last week on Wednesday, we deployed an additional 4-man team. What they did is they carried additional machinery, equipment, trucks with them to assist with dewatering, repair of leaks, etc. And so that work is going very well. Today, we expect to resume the tankering of water. There are parts of Long Island where there's no piped water, but we deliver water by tanker truck in the far north and also in the far south, subject to road conditions.
In Crooked Island, Deal reports that Colonel Hill Wellfield water supply system has been reactivated on a limited basis using a standby generator. And with the exception of Lovely Bay and Salina Point settlements in Acklands, the desalination plants have been restored.
We're reviewing options at this moment to rapidly deploy desalination plants both to Colonel Hill and also Delandra Point. And also we're going to be working to deploy a water tanker truck to assist in tankering water, desalinated water that's produced to those communities who do not have piped water. In Salina Point, we have a desalination plant there. However, there's still some power issues that are being worked out between us and BEC. Those matters are being actively addressed. But in the interim, there is a limited amount of water in the storage tank, and so we are rationing water to the community. The initial reports are that approximately 1 mile of our water main into Lovely Bay has been washed away, and so while the community of Chesters is being supplied by the Wellfield, we are reviewing how best we can supply the community of Lovely Bay in the interim.
Public health officials conducted health screenings for residents impacted by the storm. Deputy Chief Medical Officer Dr. Delon Brennan told ZNS News that while a contingency plan is in place, a team of medical professionals have been on the ground for several days conducting assessments.
Worry about infections that may be spread, whether they are skin and soft tissue infections, rashes. You can have infections that go a little deeper when people are stuck by a nail. You know, you have all sorts of injuries that they can get, and so you do have to worry about those kinds of things. So we do have a plan for how we would address those issues with the health sector and the health team being beefed up. So we have people who are already on those islands, nurses, physicians, and then we have flown in additional medical support with additional physicians and nurses who've been able to travel to those islands to either just provide medical care or provide relief for the people who are already there.
Dr. Brennan says based on their initial assessments, while there were some closures of clinics on those islands, there were no new cases of any illnesses after the storm.
Personnel and people who are ill or injured, how are we getting those people around as well? So that's a part of what we want to do. Looking at the communications mechanisms, if someone is ill or injured, how is it that we would be able to communicate that issue within the sector itself, but also do they need to be moved to another island or into the capital for care? So all of that is the full assessment of what we're doing when we go down. And the good thing is we don't have a lot of illness outside of people's regular chronic non-communicable diseases. So we have had to replace medical supplies and replace their medications themselves and make sure people know where to go if they have issues. The good thing is we've only had to close down 2 clinics, so most people are able to go to where they would usually have gotten care.